Hello and welcome, everybody. This is the Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call for December 14th. I'm your host, Brian T. Jackett. On today's call, we got some great topics that we'll be covering, but first we'll do our usual updates on news and other things that are going on the Microsoft 365 platform. We'll do our group picture time, get everyone's faces in there, get to see our wonderful community waving and smiling at each other. And then we got 3 great demos we'll be doing today, from Nancy doing some stuff with Office scripts, Jay talking a little bit about how to actually deploy solutions into the US government cloud, and Seb to come in and talk to us a little bit about some of the new Microsoft Graph Toolkit controls, to kind of show you what those things are all about. And if there's any time at the end, we'll also conclude with some Q&A. Now, as always, you've seen in the past, if you've joined us, we've got a number of different resources available to our community members. The first 2 on here are videos that are available to everyone, freely available. We've got our Microsoft 365 developer videos, aka.ms/m365dev YouTube. We also have our community videos as well for all the community calls and other things that are going on, aka.ms/m365pmp/videos. We have a number of different open source initiatives that are available, so feel free to contribute to be able to share samples, to be able to work with lots of different areas. We love to see the community engaging in these areas. Number of resources available on there as well, you can see on the screen. There are also as well sample galleries. So if you're looking for, hey, what does it actually look like when I implement a various, let's say, team samples or SPFX web parts or adaptive cards or Power Platform and so forth, lots of different areas to plug in with that. Please do share your submissions, review other things, feel free to comment on things. Great for people to see what the community is building. And you can also kind of see previews of things before you actually go and roll it out into your environment. If you need to get the one-stop shop, where should I go to find all the different URLs, all the information, all the invites that you need? You can find that at aka.ms/m365pnp. You'll find all the links, all the information that you need on that one location. Now, a quick note, we do want to mention that the last 2 weeks of the year, so December 21st and December 28th, we're actually going to switch things up just a little bit. Because it is closer to the holiday times, a lot of folks are going to be out of office, people are celebrating with families and friends and whoever else. And rather than having our usual scripted kind of set of sessions and presenters coming in, instead we actually want to make it a little bit more informal. We're actually going to have some kind of coffee, tea, or your preferred beverage of choice. Feel free to get together. We'll have some kind of social time. This will be very similar to what we had at like the Ignite watch party, where we kind of got together, covered a little bit of a couple of things, but there won't be the normal scripted set of presentations going on there. But please, please, please do join in. We're all going to be around and getting to share in our community and stories and whatever else. There are a lot of awesome comments coming in right now. So yes, we look forward to seeing you in the following 2 weeks. Now, if you're looking for how do I get started with Microsoft 365 development, if you need to have a sandbox tenant, if you need to have some sample users, if you need some sample data, we've got just the thing for you. We have our Microsoft 365 developer program. You can find this at aka.ms/m365/dev program. We've made some recent enhancements to this that you can actually now get those tenants instantly available. We did talk about this in one of our previous calls. But the idea here is that if you need to be able to go and again, test out those team solutions, Microsoft Graph, SharePoint, and so forth, a great way to have that sandbox environment. It is available for 90 days. And as long as you continue using it, it will self-renew. So great way to test things out and kind of see what they look like. You even get to have kind of tenant admin privileges in your own little sandbox. So if you need to test things out in that elevated kind of sense, great way to go and be able to work with those. Now, there's a lot of different learning material that we also produce. Again, these are all 100% free. A lot of great information for learning modules, for training courses, learning paths, other ways that you may want to be able to kind of do that self-paced learning for yourself. You can find more at aka.ms/m365/dev/learn. Great content out there. Please feel free to take a look at all those resources. Also, circling back to our samples, again, we have a number of different samples that are available to you. So whether you're looking for SharePoint Framework web parts, whether you're looking for other kind of things to see, hey, what does it actually look like in my environment? You can use these samples together with that sandbox tenant that we talked about a little bit earlier. We've got a lot of different samples that are out there. You can find more information at aka.ms/m365/samples. And because the community is so important to us, turn things over to David to talk a little bit about our Sharing is Caring initiative.
Thanks, Brian. Well, friends, if you're new to the community, it's important to know that all these things that Brian had referenced is open for you to take advantage of from a using perspective or contributing back perspective. We have a lot of resources for you to take advantage of, but we'd love to see you contribute back even though we know there might be some hurdles at some time. So Sharing is Caring is a program that is set up to provide you hands-on guidance that is going to walk you through how to do a number of items that you see via the upcoming sessions, things like your first-time contributor via GitHub. Are you a Power Platform developer and would like to submit, but you're not familiar with that process? Would you like to present on one of the P&P demos and community calls? We'd love to see that. We want to provide you some tips and tricks. These are safe space opportunities, not recorded. They are hands-on, first of its kind in any free community. So we invite you to join any and all of our sessions. We're setting up the schedule for 2022 now. And of course, we have our ever popular AMAs, which are great opportunities to get right in front of the curators and the administrators for the programs and the initiatives on an open discussion where you can ask questions and collaborate. So again, take advantage. We'd love to get more involved and see you contribute and take advantage of the resources. And we're here to help you. So aka.ms/sharing is caring. Brian, back to you.
Thank you so much, David. Now, we do have a number of different other kind of weekly resources, whether they're podcasts, whether they're video series and so forth, for you to kind of get the latest and greatest news on what's going on in the Microsoft 365 developer landscape. First one on here is the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast by our very own Jeremy Thake and Paul Schaeflein. Great way to see interviews and latest updates and information being available within our community, so feel free to tune into that. And we also have our PMP weekly updates from Vesa and other folks being able to give us latest and greatest information, other kind of announcements and other kind of community contributions. So great way to be able to plug into this, aka.ms/PMP weekly for the video, as well as the podcast at pmpweekly.podbean.com. Now, we do have a couple of different news items to share out today. I'll go through the ones that you see on here. These are things that have been released within the last week out there. The first one is with our Microsoft Graph Assignments API, we now actually have some support for Delta queries. So if you're not familiar with Delta queries, the idea being that you can be able to go and kind of get what are the latest changes or the newest additions to a different resource. We've got 2 resources that are called out inside of the blog post. Feel free to take a look at inside them there. Rather than having to go and get all information to kind of find out what's different from the last time you called in, Delta queries can really help from that, just from a simple make one query and get the latest updates that are in there. We also have a public preview of the SharePoint Framework 1.14 release. A number of new enhancements that are coming with this. Feel free to take a look at the blog post. There's a lot of different things in there. Please stay tuned to this in terms of when the GA will be coming forth very shortly, but we do have a public preview available now. Also have a great blog post on here and video to go along with this from Bob German, talking a little bit about being able to do single sign-on with Microsoft Teams apps. I know talking with Bob, this has been a long time coming where he's wanted to share more about this, just kind of clear up some of the confusion and other kind of maybe some misunderstandings, kind of point you in the right direction in terms of how can you do this the best, most appropriate way. So feel free to take a look at that resource, great information inside of there. And our last piece of information out on here is going to be related to Teams. We are in the midst of launching a new Teams search experience. So this will bring us a little bit more in line with the way that we see search in other platforms. So whether you're in Office.com, whether you're in Bing, whether you're in SharePoint, Teams is going to have a very similar experience. So that kind of a universal search across different hubs, different kind of experiences. It'll be more in lines to get that kind of native experience across all the different platforms that are out there. There are more enhancements that are coming in the coming year. So stay tuned to this, but you can get kind of a sneak peek at where we're going with this and see how things are starting to align more together. Now it is that time for us to do our wonderful Together Mode picture time. Seb, I believe you'll be, or sorry, not Seb. Oh my gosh, getting everything all confused today. Vesa.
Wow.
We'll be doing our recording. So you take 1 week of vacation off and everything just goes out the window.
Well, to be fair, me and Seb look alike for sure, so you can easily confuse us. Right, Seb? Right, Seb?
Yeah, I saw Seb's face on the little together time there, and of course, think right of him.
Yeah, we like two twins, me and Vesa.
Let's see if we're filling in fast. Let's wait on 3 more to show up. I didn't even have a time to show up. Okay, so I think we're full. We are up in 50. Let's do some hand waving, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Really cool to see you all on the call. Awesome to have you in here. Great to see over 200 attendees again today on this call. Awesome. Excellent. We're going to grab AK animation done. That one. Thank you. Really, really good. And thank you, Seth, for being an example on the back again. So really, really cool.
It's like you got a pre-canned video in there, Seb. I feel like every time I see you, it's the exact same posture, same hand waving.
It is. It's easier that way. I can be in my on the couch and not do it.
Hey, you got to present today, so you can't be slacking too much, sir. All right, let's move into the main portion of our discussion for today. We've got 3 great presentations will be happening. First, we'll start up with Nancy talking a little bit about Office scripts. Nancy, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks so much, Brian, and thanks again, Vesa, for the opportunity to be here. Super excited for that. Thanks again, everyone, for joining today. I'm Nancy, and I'm from the Office Scripts team as a PM, and I'm really excited just to be talking about one of the new features we're releasing, and also just give people an overview of what Office Scripts even is, since we are a pretty new feature, and I imagine some people are like, well, I haven't even heard about what Office Scripts is yet. So I will be doing both of those things during this meeting today. But first, I kind of wanted to get a sense of people's automation experiences so far. So, feel free in the chat or, with the Teams Reacts just to share a little bit about how you currently automate using Office. If you don't, that's totally okay as well. Maybe this call will inspire you, but would love to just get a lay of how people automate. Very cool. Some people using Office scripts already, or I'm hoping so, but a lot of validation for me. And cool using PowerShell. That's very interesting as well. Awesome. So I see some people have some experience with VBA, maybe a little bit with Office scripts as well. I will spend some time just giving an overview of Office scripts, but feel free to drop questions in the chat. Oh, and Power Automate is another one I didn't include on here. I apologize, Power Automate, but that is also a very viable automation solution. But as I said before, feel free to drop questions in the chat. I will be monitoring that and also, interrupt or anything, trying to engage in conversation as much as possible. So this is what's on the agenda for today. I want to cover 3 main questions. What is Office scripts? What are script buttons? And then how can you get involved in using our feature, getting started, and giving feedback? So we're really going to start off with this first question, what is Office scripts? Some of this might be refresher material since I know some people might have Office scripts experience on the call, but hopefully this information will be insightful if you don't have this much experience. So what is Office scripts? I want to start off with the mission statement, which is to empower Office users to easily automate tasks and processes to run their businesses efficiently anytime and anywhere. And so the key places that I want to highlight here is that this is for Office users running their business processes. We currently are available on Excel and the web as an automation platform for commercial and educational licenses. And then the second part of this, right, we want to be able to allow users to run these automations anytime and anywhere. And so currently what this means is that we're in the browser, regardless of what browser you're using, as long as you have an internet connection, you're able to run these automations. And we want it also be possible for you to, even if you're on vacation, to be able to schedule these automations to also happen. And so I think in the chat, someone had asked about Power Automate. We do have an integration with Power Automate that allows you to essentially automate those automations so you can schedule them to run even if you're away. And I know we talked a little about like VBA, Office add-ins. Those are also automation technologies. So what makes Office scripts different, right? And so this graph is really just showing how our team thinks about the different automation solutions from this axis of the different platforms that you can use, desktop to web, as well as how easy it is to pick up the programming language from approachable to end users to more of a pro developer audience. You'll notice that Office scripts is more geared towards those end users that might not have a huge amount of programming experience, but also are working in a more collaborative environment in their workplace. And that's part of our goal, to make automation as accessible as possible. We don't believe that you need to have a computer science degree in order to automate your tasks within your spreadsheets. And so we think this is the differentiating factor of Office scripts, and I'll show you a little demo to kind of show some features that we've done to be more intentional in this regard. And then I would say the second part of this that I mentioned earlier, being collaborative in the work and web environment. So we do want users to be able to easily share these scripts with other people. So even if you're feeling a little lazy and you don't want to create an automation, you can at least benefit from the automations that other people have created. Or if you are the one that's creating the automation, you're able to share that with other colleagues, have them benefit from that as well. I currently see a question about Power Automate being in the bottom right. So actually, this chart is really specific to Office itself. I would say Power Automate's not captured on here, but I'll get into that a little bit later, and feel free to ask the question again if you feel like it's a little bit unclear what the relationship is between Office scripts and Power Automate. But good question. Thank you, Jen. All right, so I'm going to hop into just like first showing the functionality and then going into a demo. And then again, feel free to continue bringing questions into the chat and I'll raise them here as well. So this is what Office Scripts currently looks like today. If you go to the Automate tab in Excel on the web, you'll find a couple of different key features. One is the action recorder. And for those of you that are more familiar with VBA, then this might seem very familiar to you. It is a way to capture actions within the workbook and record that into a script. We really recommend this if you don't know too much about the programming language. It's a great place to start and just see like how the automations are built. We also have a code editor, and this allows you to program your scripts if you do have that JavaScript, TypeScript knowledge. We use the same APIs as Office.js, but in a more synchronous manner, so we call them Office Scripts APIs. And I will show you that later as well in the demo. And then the last thing I want to call out here is that you can actually share your scripts with other people. So if you see that people icon, I know it's a little small on the slide, but that just indicates that those are shared scripts. And so anyone that has access to the workbook is also able to go to the Automate tab, run those automations. But if you think that's cool, I'm really excited to share with you this new feature that we have for sharing scripts more easily as well. So we recently released this new feature called script buttons to production, or it's still currently going through the rings. So this is kind of like an early sneak peek, I guess, if you haven't gotten the feature yet. But essentially what this feature allows you to do is run your scripts by selecting a button within the workbook itself. And so the goal here is that the person doesn't have to go to the Automate tab and identify the right script anymore. They can just select the button where they see it. And we hope this allows users to use your automation as long as they have access to the workbook, essentially. And because we are essentially, this is like a shape within the workbook, you also can customize it to meet whatever fonts, color preferences that you might have. I've seen some people do some pretty cool stuff with this, so I'm really excited to see how you all try this out or learn how to use it. And then, as you see on the screenshot on the right, the way that you can access and see if you have this feature today is if you go to this overflow menu and then select Add Button. I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chat, and then I will hop over to the demo. Let's see. Yes, scripts are stored in OneDrive. That's a really exciting thing for us as well. That means that it's stored in the cloud and that you can really use it anytime, anywhere. Can we prompt the user for input, whether in a dialog, tab, or cell? So that's a great question. Thanks again, Jim. We don't currently offer that functionality. I think that's something that we could be exploring a little bit more. Feel free to drop in the chat if there's like a use case that comes to mind for something like that, because actively we are starting to think about what are the next steps for either this feature or future features to come. Oh yes, is Office Scripts replacing macros? I think we do get this question quite a bit, and just answering that question, Office Scripts and VBA, they live to coexist. You'll notice in that chart that we have right here, we didn't say that VBA is going away at all. So I want to be really clear about this, because I know with the introduction of Office Scripts, we do get these questions of like, well, what's happening to VBA now? Nothing is happening to VBA. We think that Office Scripts and VBA can live in harmony, because Office Scripts is more, if you're working in a more collaborative environment where you want to share things, then we recognize that can be a really good solution, because we're really focusing on that modern and collaborative work environment. But we also recognize that Office Scripts can't do all the things that VBA does. For example, I think VBA, you can access different files within the spreadsheet, like just one spreadsheet itself. Because of the way that Office Scripts was built, we want this to be in a more secure environment. And we're thinking a little bit more, as I said, about collaboration. Those are some scenarios that VBA will do that Office Scripts doesn't currently have to offer. And so there are a couple differentiators. I think what I'll do after I give this demo is I'll drop a link in the chat with some documentation so you can learn more about the differences between VBA and Office Scripts. Thanks so much for the question, Thomas. Cool. And I just want to make sure that I get through all of this, so I might answer some more of these questions after I run through the demo. But thanks again for the questions. This is awesome. So I'm going to start sharing another screen with the Excel workbook on it. And I'm really hoping that this works out well, because I was testing out the demo before this call. Let's see. OK. So here I am in Excel on the web. And I just want to run through a quick demo of what our feature does, and also maybe an example scenario that you might see in the workplace. So what we have here is a table of just like different products, what has been sold by different countries at what time. And so the goal of this project, let's say, is to create a pivot table of all the total products that are sold by each country. This is what the input looks like, and then we expect the output to look something like this. We have a table, and then you're also able to filter this table by, I guess, the different kinds of products that are being sold. So maybe fruit, just see just the fruit on here, or maybe just vegetables. Okay, so one way that you could do this is pretty much manually, and I can just walk you through that as well. I'm going to copy this workbook. This. So I would say probably a manual way of doing this is just go in here. You might insert the pivot table. And based on the filters of product, category, amount, and country. And we can see this is pretty much what we want. I think we have a couple blanks here, but this is the pivot table. And then you might say, I want to create the pivot chart based on this. There we go. So this is how you might do it manually. The really awesome thing about this is that if you're doing this, let's say on a repetitive basis, then you can actually automate this task using Office scripts. And so here I am selecting the automate tab that we saw in the screenshot earlier. You'll see that you can actually record all these actions using our action recorder. Because my demo was being a little wonky this morning, I'm only going to show you that very last step of creating the chart itself. But technically, all of these things can be done, recorded into a script for you using Office scripts. And so I'm just going to show you that last bit about creating the pie chart based on the data. And you'll see here it is creating the pivot chart for me. And even when I move it around, it is getting the latest coordinates of my Excel workbook. One really neat thing about the action recorder that I didn't mention earlier is that if you decide to, if you just made a mistake in your recording, then it will just update to the latest code. And so you won't have those mistakes in your recording. I think that's one differentiator between us and VBA in some ways. And I do want to show you a little bit of what the code looks like after I stop recording. So I'm going to go to that really quick. If I click on edit, this is the TypeScript JavaScript code that I was mentioning earlier. Something that we do is we will automatically comment out or comment parts of the feature. So earlier, as you can see, we recorded the insertion of the pivot chart and also the moving and resizing of the chart in the workbook itself. So that we hope that this makes it a little bit easier for people to understand what's going on in the code. And also, if you're trying to learn a little bit more about, what each part of the code is doing, then you can look at these comments over here. And I think what I'll do next is I will go back to this input and show you a little bit about this already created script from earlier. So if I go back to the generate pivot chart and table, I just want to show you how I got to this button in the first place. So if I select this, you'll see in the overflow menu, I have this add button option. And it just creates a button for me wherever I have my active cell. So if I decide to put it here, the button would show up here as well. And you'll see that it just automatically shares that script with everyone within the workbook. So if I decided to share this workbook with someone that had the same tenant as me, then they could also use this script. Cool. So I think I got a question about the Power Automate, and I want to show that as well. I'm going to first run the script so you can see exactly what's happening. As a reminder, this was the expected output. And if I select this script, you'll see here it's loading. It's going to run the script. And then it actually creates this pivot table on another sheet. So in sheet 3, you can see that it's created the pivot table and the chart that we were expecting from earlier. It looks a little different because of the filters. There we go. Okay. And then, so I'm just going to quickly show the Power Automate piece of this as well, since I think I got a question around it. If I go to this overflow menu again, you'll notice one of the options is actually for creating a flow. And so we do have a Power Automate integration that allows you to schedule a script to run. within Excel, but we've also see some really great community scenarios where you can connect Office scripts with the contents of a Outlook email, maybe like a Teams message. So it is very much something that you can use as a connector to other services as well. This is just the main one, I guess, but I'm happy to show a couple links at the end if there's time with links to our documentation on additional scenarios that you can try out here. Really excited to see what people do with this one. I can't see the chat anymore, so I'm going to go back into the presentation and feel free to continue asking questions. I just want to make sure I get through the rest of this demo because I recognize, I don't know, how am I doing on time so far?
We'll need to wrap up here probably the next couple minutes, but I think you're okay for just a few more.
Okay, sounds great. All right, yeah, just a few more slides. And I'll answer the rest of the questions in the chat then probably. But again, thanks so much, everyone. I think it's really great to just get this feedback from people because this is pretty new for us. And especially for script buttons, we want to get the feedback early as it's still rolling out to all the people within the production ring. All right, so the last few things I want to cover, one is just how to get started, and the other one is how you can give feedback to us, whether or not you use Office scripts. So if this is your first time learning about us, here are 3 links that we on the team think might be helpful just to get started. One is the link to our portal page, which is kind of like the home page for Office scripts. Another one is the documentation, and that's where you can kind of see how Office scripts work, but also look into the API if you are a little bit more familiar with programming. The third piece is the sample scripts that I was talking to you about of how you can integrate with Power Automate, but also how you can just use our feature for automating some tasks in your workflow. Cool. And the last thing I have here is just about how you can give us feedback. So this is definitely a great forum for this, and I really appreciate the feedback that I see in the chat so far. But you don't have to just wait until our demos. You can also give us feedback throughout the year through our green room. And so this is an opportunity for sharing automation requirements you might have, informing the future priorities, as well as viewing some early designs of our investigations. This is an NDA group that we have going on, and we recognize that not everyone knows Office scripts. So we want to make sure that anyone who has an interest in automation or an interest in automation in Office is able to join. Feel free to sign up. I will send that link out in the chat as well for aka.ms/oscripts. And with that, that is the end of my presentation. So again, a huge thank you to Brian and Vesa for giving me this chance to present today. And then everyone for listening in on my conversation so far. I think this has been super helpful. And it's really exciting to be able to talk to the audience as well. So.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for this, Nancy. 2 quick questions I got asked a couple of times, if you wouldn't mind just answering before you drop. First one is, will this be available for desktop as well?
Yeah, great question. So I think going back earlier to the mission statement that we had set out. So something that we have mentioned in here is that we want users to be able to run automations anytime and anywhere. And so when we think about cross-platform, that is very much in that anytime, anywhere piece, I would say. We are starting to investigate what it might mean to be on different platforms besides Excel on the web, since we recognize not everyone's going to be using their browser to do their work all the time. So all I can say right now is that we are looking into it. I can't really promise any dates or features beyond that, but
okay.
Thanks for
the other question.
Yeah.
The other question was around, can you run this unattended? And I believe the Power Automate option would fulfill that, but if there's anything else that you can share, that'd be helpful.
Yes, so I think I just want to make sure I have the same understanding of unattended as the person who asked this question. But yes, you could run this unattended by selecting the create flow and then going into Power Automate to schedule that script to run for you. And I just selected this slide because I know it has that create flow option in the overflow menu. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any more questions in the chat as well.
Yep, we've got a list of other ones in there, but if you'd like to answer them in chat, that'd be helpful, and then we can move on to our next presenter. So Nancy, thank you so much for coming on to present about this today. Really great information, and people are really loving this with all the reactions. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you again, everyone. All
right. Next, we have up Jay to talk to us a little bit about developing applications with the government cloud in mind. Jay, if you'd like to come off mute and take over presenting, the floor is yours.
All right. All right, awesome. So first of all, I would like to say thank you for this wonderful opportunity. It's going to be a quick introduction on government cloud, right? So we call it GCC. So that's going to be the government community cloud. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about planning to build experiences in the United States government cloud. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the nuances that are associated with it as well. So a little bit about myself. So like I said, my name is Jay Hangett. I started with Microsoft about 3 years ago, and it was right after a successful career with the United States Navy. I've worked in both public and private sector. Majority of my time has been in public sector since I've joined Microsoft. I've worked with different technologies such as SharePoint, Teams, Power Platform, bot services, as well as a variety of different services throughout Office 365. So let's go ahead and go straight into our information here. All right, so when it comes to the government, there is a lot of different people and individuals that we have to talk about in regards to what they will be bringing to the actual table here. We have our government leader. So our government leader is the individual who will have the actual guidance that they're going to provide to their people. They're going to have their actual service that they will be providing to their customers. They're also going to be making policies and rules and regulations, and some of that will follow suit. Then we have our government employee. This could be a contractor. This could be someone who's trying to build a collaboration of team services. This could also be someone who is trying to develop a strategy for the next individual. Then lastly, we have our field workers. So our field workers are individuals that stem from our social services all the way down to our engineers. These folks here are ones that are looking for possibly mobile apps, automation, similar to what Nancy was just talking about. They may be looking for different spreadsheets. They may be looking for other Office 365 services that we may be providing. Now, with Microsoft 365, we started creating a few years ago the Microsoft 365 government clouds. So as earlier I mentioned, they were called the government community clouds. We have a couple of them. There's 3 at this time. So we have the Microsoft Government Community Cloud, or GCC. We have our GCC High, which is our Government Community Cloud High. And then we also have our Department of Defense, which is our DoD. These clouds have a couple of different productivity solutions that you can bring in, but there's so many differences between those 3 and commercial. And we'll talk a little bit about that shortly. Some of the regulations that we deal with in the government sector or private sector, it has to do with what you see on the screen here. Many of the services have to be FedRAMPed, meaning they're being reviewed prior to release to the government cloud. So this is so that these services can now work inside of the government due to the regulations and the requirements for security and compliance. We also have a list of certifications and agreements that we have to meet in order to cover these different nuances. In regards to DoD, we have a full separation of a variety of different things that have to be totally isolated from the other 2 clouds and the commercial cloud as well. So on this slide here, we have just a couple of different sections that cover the compliance. So if we look at the slide, we can see the different phases of governance and compliance that have to be met for each one of these government clouds, right? So on the commercial side, it talks about how it could be FedRAMPed at high. It talks about we have our US or OCONUS for the data center location. If you notice across all 3 of our government GCC and GCC High and DoD clouds, all 3 of those have our location in CONUS, meaning in the United States. That's where our actual data will lie, within the United States. If we go further down the list, these are different certifications, different agreements and things like that that we have to bring forth and apply to our government clouds to ensure that we are in a compliance with the regulations for each cloud. So we're going to go over a couple of differences here. I'm going to talk about 3 cores. So the first one here, I have OneDrive. So OneDrive, when it comes to file cards within OneDrive are currently not available in the GCC High environments. SharePoint library access is limited as of right now within both GCC and GCC High and DoD. Windows 10 apps that go across the HoloLens, they go across Xbox, and a few other services have extreme limitations when it comes to the DoD and GCC High. Next, when it comes to SharePoint connectors that require internet access, those are extremely limited within our SharePoint environments. Asset libraries are currently available only in GCC, but not in GCC High and DoD. Microsoft Graph. When it comes to Microsoft Graph, we have so many different features in Microsoft Graph, but approximately about half of those are reaching our community clouds. So for GCC High and DoD, those two clouds, we're not barely getting any. I think it's about a quarter. And then Microsoft Search is not associated with any of our GCC or GCC High or DoD clouds. Next, we have our teams. So in regards to teams, we have third-party applications and publishing that go within our team's environment. And those are, once again, limited to our GCC High and DoD environments. In GCC, we have the ability to use third-party applications and actually publish those. That's a feature that just was turned on probably within the last 6 months or so. Team members within GCC High and DoD are limited to 2,500 team members per team. One of the big things that we've been working on within the last month or so is to utilize different automations within teams, such as using message extensions and posting messages as what we call the Flowbot in Teams. That functionality is not available across any of the government clouds. And then lastly, we have our webinars. That's also not available. So the best place to see which services and features are available within your government clouds, if you are a government cloud customer, is to go to the Microsoft 365 roadmap. I'll post a link for this actual roadmap service so that people can be able to pull that up. This right here is an easy way for us to actually drill down into what we want to be able to see. For example, right here, we have 585 developments and we have rollouts. I can go ahead and select the Microsoft Teams. Then the next thing I can do is go ahead and select the different clouds. In this case, I'm choosing GCC. It actually filters down and breaks it down for us based on what has been launched, what has been rolled out, and what is in development. And then we can scroll down and get a time frame based on what we are looking for and when it will be rolled out or if it has been released to the public. All right, so with that, I would like to introduce to you some of the brand new things that we are bringing to Microsoft. We have a Microsoft Federal Teams developer community that myself and a couple of my counterparts are starting to create. The Microsoft Federal Teams community, developer community, is going to be a community of individuals that are trying to join in with the Microsoft 365 platform community here and some of our other leaders and our peers to now change that dynamic, to change those nuances and to bring forth a full spectrum of services across all of these clouds. So please be on the lookout. We're going to be posting blogs. We're going to be posting videos. We're going to be posting different step-by-steps. We're going to be bringing forth as much as we can so that our government customers and our public sector customers can now be able to streamline this service. Here's a listing of some of the government resources. I'll put all these in the chat and I'll be able to share this with everyone. That first one is that roadmap that we just were looking at briefly. And then right after that, it goes into the different documentations within our Microsoft documentation that covers the actual services and the descriptions that are located right now. Those different services will actually talk about which ones are available to you, which ones may not be available to you, and which ones may be coming. But the roadmap should be the #1 resource. And with that being said, that ends my presentation. I want to say thank you once again. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask right now.
Thank you so much, Jay, for sharing all about the different government community clouds. I know people always look for information based on, differences or ways they can get involved. So great to hear there's more community stuff coming into here. And people are definitely looking forward to the links that she'll be sharing in there.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. With that, we'll turn things over to Sebastian. If you would like to take the floor and talk a little bit about MGT and some of the other great controls that we can talk about today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vista. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for the other presenters for today's topic. It was really, really cool. I learned a lot today, to be very honest. Continuing on our journey from our last time that we all met, wanted to go a little bit deeper into the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. As a promise, the last time that we met, we said that we wanted to go within every single component, understanding how to really leverage Microsoft Graph Toolkit in your own solutions. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to stop at the login component, where we'll be looking at how can you leverage the Microsoft Graph Toolkit as a way to get authentication working inside your application, and how this could deliver some value around the login component. But before we go any further, I'd like to remind folks a little bit of concept around the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So the Graph Toolkit is a collection of reusable framework agnostic components and authentication providers that allows you to access and work with the Microsoft Graph. The components are fully functional. You can customize them, and they work with any web framework, and they work on all modern browsers. For today, we will be using the Microsoft Graph Toolkit as a vanilla HTML and JavaScript component. So we're really going to use the web components approach here. Nothing crazy, really kind of the basic stuff here. I don't want to go into any framework specific capabilities just yet. That's going to be for way later in that series of videos. Why do you care about the Graph Toolkit? Well, first, if you're like me, and I'm proud to say it, I'm a very lazy developer, and I love to cut on dev time. I don't necessarily like to build UI components. I really focus on the value that I can bring to my app and to my business, and that's why we believe that the Graph Toolkit really cuts down on development time. It's also already beautiful. So when you build with the Graph Toolkit, it looks great within your applications, but it's also very flexible. So if you want to build something that seems like an M365 component, just use one of our components. But if you want to customize it, you can fully customize the way the Microsoft Graph Toolkit looks like. And finally, it works everywhere. So it works on any type of browser, on any type of framework. It even works in some rich applications when you're using Electron, for example. So it really brings your knowledge, your skills to a ton of different platforms. So today we're going to talk about the login component, which is, I would say, the basic component to start with, because it really delivers the initial value of the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, which is to connect you directly to the Microsoft Graph. Here you see the login in that slide, what it looks like, and how you can embed it inside a code, like inside an HTML page. So what about we drop the slides and we go straight into the demo? So let me close that here. Let me go straight there, where I have a Visual Studio code totally empty. I don't have any files. I don't have anything in there. And here what I'm going to do, I will be creating a new file in there. I'm going to create a new file. It's going to be called index.html. So that way I can have that HTML file at the root of my app, like if I was building a single page application. And I will add in there the basics of my applications, right? So let me zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So here you're going to have like a regular HTML page, what it looks like, and that's it. That's the only thing that you have to do to get started. Then the next thing that you're going to have to do, you're going to have to go in there and add MGT to the mix. you're going to want to add the Microsoft Graph Toolkit as a dependency on this application. So how do you do that? Well, it's actually pretty simple. As you're using simple HTML, there's no packages that you need to download or whatsoever. You just need to add a script reference directly in the head of your application, like the following. You just need to add the script. The source is the following, where we have a loader here. That's going to make sure that we're loading all the different pieces of our packages. So you don't have to load a ton of different capabilities. We are going to take care of that for you. So let me add here a little bit of a title. Hello, M365 developers. And then afterwards, let's start. So if I want to add components in there, if I want to add something that is MGT, here I can just come in here, add a div, and just show you that hello, everybody, just to show you that it is working. I'm using, as part of my VS Code, an extension called Live Server, so I don't have to run a server on my machine or whatsoever to run that HTML page. I'm just going to go live here, and on port 5500, I'm going to have an HTML file that's going to get served automatically. So that's the start. We don't have anything MGT in here. We have MGT loaded, but we're not doing anything specific with it. Now, when we're talking about connecting to Microsoft Graph, there is one aspect that is super important, and you're going to have to create an application. You're going to have to create an application in Azure AD, in Microsoft Identity Platform, to act as a proxy between your app and your security constructs that lives in the Microsoft Identity world. So let me go and create that app for us. So you have a good understanding of what are the different steps to get things started. So the first thing you will want to do, you will want to go to your Azure portal. You might say, I don't have Azure connected to my environment or whatsoever, but everybody has an AAD portal all the time available. And one of the ways that I use this is using the aad.portal.azure.com. That's going to be a simplified version of the Azure portal that will just focus on the Azure Active Directory components. Let me log in right here. And in there, let me zoom in a little bit. I'm going to go to my Azure Active Directory. That's the Azure Active Directory that backs my Office 365 or Microsoft 365 tenant, which is that M365 X263 blah, blah, blah tenant that I have. And I'm going to go to the app registrations, where I will be creating a first app registration with my application. So I'm going to do a new registration. I'm going to call it M365 platform. And I'm going to decide, do I want this to be just for my own organization? Or do I want this app to be used by multiple organizations within their own tenant? So for this case, I'm going to use this second one, which is what we see a majority of our partners doing, but both of them are possible. If you want to keep it just for your organization, you can create this one as a organizational directory only, or you can do it as a multi-tenant. Then afterwards, we're asking you for a redirect URI. In my case, we are running the code at localhost 5500. So let me select that I want to create a single page application that my redirect URI will be HTTP localhost 5500. And then I'm going to hit register. That's great. Now my app was created. By default, I'm going to get an application ID. I'm going to also get a directory ID, which is the ID of my tenant, but I won't need it in that case. And I can go see in my API permissions that by default, an app always brings user.read, meaning that it can sign in and read the user profile of the connected user. And in our case for today, because we're just talking about the login component, that will be enough. In the future sessions we're going to expand on these scopes. Then we're going to see some of the consent later on. So let me go back to my branding, my overview here. I'm just gonna keep it there so I can have an easy access to my application ID. So let me then afterwards go back to my HTML page, and let me bring in the component of that I need to start my journey here. The first thing that I'm going to need, I'm going to remove my hello everybody, and I'm just going to paste in what is the provider that I want to use. The provider is what will handle all of the authentication for you. We are lazy developers, so we don't want to code all of the really, really complex capabilities that come with authentication. So what we're doing here, we're leveraging the MSAL2 provider that MGT provides to really streamline your authentication. You're going to see how great this is. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to copy my application ID here. I'm going to paste it as my client ID right here. So now, automatically, when a component will request access to Microsoft Graph, it's going to look at the provider and ask the provider, am I already connected? If I'm not connected, can you connect me before I do any calls to Microsoft Graph? So how do we start? We're going to just add the MGT login component. Something that I want to mention and highlight. You see these components. Do they feel like they are natural HTML components? They are not. They are web components. So when you're loading MGT via the loader here, this means that automatically it also registers as part of your DOM new elements that you can use. And that's really what MGT is about. It brings the MGT login component and all the other components that we're going to use later to be available as simple HTML components like any other div, span, or paragraph tags. So now, let me just hit save on this. And let me go back to here. Well, let me go back. Wait a second. That went way too fast, right? Let me go 5500 right here. Give me a second. I'm just going to make sure that I do it on purpose. I'm pretty sure that I have something in my cache that tells me that I'm already logged in, and that's why it does the flow here. But anyway, that's okay. In that case, you see, I was automatically redirected to this screen, the screen that is hosted by Microsoft, making sure that, hey, by the way, you're going to be logged in, but you're going to be logged into an application. And this application will do the following things. It's going to sign you and read your profile, and it's going to maintain access to data that have given it access to. So these are kind of the bare bones consents that you're going to get when you're going to connect to Graph. As a user, or as a developer, you can decide, do I want all the users to accept the consent, or do I want the admin to pre-consent it? It's up to you. And then here I can just hit accept, and automatically I'm going to be redirected. And now what do we see? We see the component that turned from sign in to my name and my face coming directly from Microsoft Graph. And when I click on this, now we have the full-blown login component that shows up right here. What is great with this is now, because I am logged in, I can actually call Graph with the scopes that I have access to, in that case, the scopes of the current user with user.read, where I can do a little bit more. So here, yes, I have MGT, but MGT also provides me a way to get access to any areas of Microsoft Graph. So let me show you a quick example here. Let me do this. I'm going to go to my sample here. I'm just going to add a very simple pre. So basically, that's going to be like formatted a little bit like if it was code. That element here, we're going to add the current user information, the user that is connected. So how do we do that? Well, we do this in a very simple way. We're going to add a script tag to our code, and we will be just at the end of the code, we're going to just do this. So I have my script tag where when the provider will get updated, so basically when we're going to get logged in, when we're ready, I want you to load the current user. And how do we do that? Well, as part of some of the variables and the content that is available with MGT, I have the global provider, its state. I can get access to the graph client that was already authenticated, so I don't have to re-authenticate. I'm going to use the graph client. I'm going to call this /me. And when I get the results back, I'm just going to display it as my results straight into my user info tag here. So that way I'm going to see all the user info of my user. Let me save that. Let me go back here. And now, as you can see, it automatically reloaded and it added this in here. So not only we covered today the login component, but we also covered some of the internals of the provider capabilities that are offered with the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So let me just quickly go back to slides before we end up today. A couple of resources if you want to know more about MGT, aka.ms/MGT. Our docs, our playground, and our learn modules are available. And all the code that we will be going through in the next couple of sessions together will be available at the aka.ms/mgt/sandbox. So if you want to go and play around and see how you can also get your own MGT login component on your HTML page, you're more than welcome to go and clone that repo. Brian, back to you.
Thank you so much, Seb. Awesome stuff to see in terms of getting started with MGT and some of the different controls out there. Really appreciate you coming on and getting to share that good stuff for this. We have 1 minute left, so we'll go ahead and quickly wrap up with our last slides on here. One reminder again that the next 2 weeks for December 21st and 28th, we'll be having essentially some community time, coffee, tea, or as I said earlier, your beverage of choice. Feel free to join in with us. We'll have some great community chat, getting to hang out together in those down weeks when a lot of other folks may be off, but we still want to get together with our community. So please, please, please do join in. If you'd like to see any of the different community calls, again, you can find all the different links and schedules on aka.ms/m365pnp. And as always, all of our videos will be recorded and available on the M365 Community PNP YouTube channel, aka.ms/m365pnp/videos. Follow along with us on Twitter. We're at Microsoft 365 Dev, M365pnp. And our next call will be next week, December 21st at our usual time. So we look forward to seeing you and have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Awesome work.
Cheers all.